Day.
And I'm Richard Day.
We're both chiropractors.
We've been in practice together for 11 years.
Married for 10.
With 3 beautiful little girls.
We know it's possible to have an exceptional practice that's built around your life.
Because we've done it.
So we've created this podcast,
the Lifestyle Practice Builders Podcast.
We'll interview chiropractors, answer questions, and bring you resources to help build and grow your practice.
So let's get this party started.
Welcome back to the Lifestyle Practice Builders Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Haley Day, and today is part 2 of my interview with Dr. Laura Wright. She's a sports chiropractor in the wintry wonderland of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. She's an avid backcountry snowboarder and in the short summer months, a mountain biker. She and her husband started their practice 3 years ago in the mountain paradise, and they have never looked back. Today, we talk about how you can differentiate yourself and what might be a saturated market and several other tips for getting started in practice or looking for inspiration in your current practice. I want to remind you too that we've started a wait list. If you are looking to start your own podcast, maybe a local podcast to help you network within your community and build up your own influence within that community, then get on our wait list at lifestylepracticebuilders.com/podcast. We're putting a little something together to help you out with that. So get on the wait list, lifestylepracticebuilders.com/podcast. And thank you for listening into the interview. Dr. Laura, thank you for being on the podcast. So let's talk a little bit back about your practice. What other marketing what worked really well in the beginning? You know, you said you kind of threw a lot of darts. What would you say ended up being some of the best marketing that you did that worked out the best through the first couple years? And then how has that changed during COVID for you guys?
I'd say in the beginning, I think just having a good web presence. We came into a small town and there were a lot of other chiropractors there, but not necessarily any of them using social media. Like getting the most Google reviews was not difficult to do in our town. And I think that we were lucky that way, and just having good content on our website. I'd say being different than the other chiropractors in town. We're not straight or traditional chiropractors. We do active release technique, a bunch of soft tissue work, rehab. So feeding into a different market than all of the other chiropractors. And I think the most surprising and fun thing that we did is we started working with our local roller derby team. And we've been open maybe 2.5 months when we started working with them. And it's not a sport you typically think about, like, oh yeah, let's sponsor the local roller derby team. But it was absolutely incredible and game changing for our business. Roller derby ladies they're tough, they're outspoken, they get really fun injuries, so they're super fun to work on, but they're local in the community. So they sent the most people in. So they were probably the start of our building a referral-based business.
That's awesome. You never know where it's going to come from. And I think it's good that you guys were open and followed through with that, and it worked out for you.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the things I miss. We've worked with them every year since, and then they haven't been playing since COVID struck. So not this year either, not last year. So hopefully next year.
Yeah. So what have you been doing this last year that's been a little bit different?
I'd say we've been doing less in general. And also, I guess we can get away with that because we've been open longer and people talk about us. I'd say more focused on social media. We're still not the best at social media, but getting pictures and information out there. I think the podcast has helped as well. People that I would never think would listen to a health podcast have listened to it because their friend who's a personal trainer and a professional skier was on there. So they're like, oh, I listened to Max's episode. So that's just, I guess, and also built our referral network because now all of these health providers I'm talking with are sending people in. I think another thing in our community has just been being a safe space during COVID. Some chiropractors in our area won't wear masks, don't clean their office well, and we've upped our game. We're on top of our game there, not for our sake, but because we have enough patients who are very concerned about it, and they don't go anywhere else, but they will come see us, and just being a space where they really they feel like they can come and they're safe. And I'd say it's harder on us. We working completely opposite hours in the office so that we have, only us and a patient in there at a time. We're spacing out in between. But I'd say for our community and our community work, we've moved up from like code yellow to orange to red. And now they just made up code purple for our area because the levels are so high.
Oh.
I think code black is next. I'm a little bit worried about that. But we're a tourist community. So we have people coming in all the time and just bringing new strains in. Yeah. And so for us, like that's been pretty key.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's good that you guys are doing that for your community and you can be that place. I think there are a lot of people, I say too, that because of COVID, they need someone else. And they, I think, and we've had a lot of people reach out that have been putting care off, but now a little bit of a break has given them the opportunity to focus and to be more concerned about their overall health too. So cool. Well, so we want to make sure we give you've given us a lot of actionable content so far that people can utilize in their own practice or starting their own practice. What's one piece of advice you would give a new doc?
This might be something that other people wouldn't say, but I'd say go all in. I think that if you have a plan B, then you have something to fall back on and you're not going to be 100% motivated to make it work. And if you have a plan B, like maybe you're not believing that it's really going to work. I think the more that you have to keep you accountable, the better. I learned this from my dad. He, had been working for CDC and other companies for years. And then while me and my two siblings were in middle school and high school, he decided to start his own business. So he had a whole family, a mortgage on him. So he had to make it work. And I think I guess Tyler and I could have got other jobs, but like, this is what we were going to do. We had to make it work. We had twice the student debt. So this is what we do. We're going to work hard on it. We're not going to get, side jobs doing this or that. In the meanwhile, we are going to be 100% building our business.
That's really good. I think, for us, it was kind of a second career for both of us too. And for us, we didn't want to do anything else. We had chosen chiropractic and we were going all in. So I think that's great advice. What about for an experienced doc that might be stuck? I mean, they're kind of doing the same thing. They're maybe being a little burnout. What would you recommend for someone like that?
Yeah, I'd say, I guess I haven't been in business that long. The closest I've gotten to burnout is pregnancy because some people have great pregnancies, but for me, it's been like exhausting and it's been hard in the morning to wake up and want to go to work. And I'm usually a morning person. And I think just, stepping back, focusing on why you do what you do. For me, it's been like picturing the patients that, they make my day when they come into the office because I've seen such big changes in their life. And I'd say maybe, if you're working yourself to death, maybe take a vacation, maybe work less hours. I had to cut back my hours because I didn't have energy and I couldn't keep up with it.
When that happened to me too, when I was pregnant, I could barely get out of bed in the morning. And I think realizing what's going on and then making the changes that can make everything work out and noticing, what's not working and trying out different things to fix it or do things differently to find your groove again is a good thing. Can you tell us about maybe a challenge that you guys have had in practice or even just in life that you've worked through, maybe a quick lesson that you learned, something that maybe didn't work out the way you thought, but you were able to change the course of it and overcome?
I'd say our biggest challenge in business is it's where we chose to start our business. It's just not an easy town to work in. Real estate is insanely expensive. The cost of living is expensive. I think Teton County, last I checked, it's up there with like Orange County in California. It is it's not where like normal people live. And coming into a small town with an already established set of chiropractors, I think we've got 10,000 in the town, 20,000 in the county, and a dozen chiropractors in town. And I think that just, when we looked at it in school, that's not something that they would have recommended. They'd say, find a market that's not already saturated. And I think, that was definitely the difficult part. And then, finding our own housing in Jackson. We spent our first 2.5 years in just like a tiny underground 1-bedroom apartment just to make it work in town. In thinking about like how we dealt with that, we differentiated. The market is saturated with chiropractors. We wanted to be the people who weren't looking for chiropractors came to. So our business is JH Backcountry Health. It doesn't say chiropractic in the name. It says chiropractic in the little subtitles underneath. But I'd say we're not reaching out. We're not trying to take patients from other chiropractors. We're getting people who've never seen chiropractors to come in. I'd say almost a third of our patients have never seen chiropractors before. And many of them have never seen chiropractors for the type of things that we treat. They've seen chiropractors for spinal adjustments, but they've never seen chiropractors who do soft tissue, who work on extremities, who will teach them rehab. I think we give our patients a mini anatomy lesson typically when they're in the office, and our goal is really to equip them with what they need to know to take care of themselves at home and then come in and see us when they need to. So just opening up the market so that we weren't competing for that same small slice that we have, that other chiropractors have in town.
Yeah, it sounds like you came in and you just differentiated yourself so that new people would find you, and that's a great way to come at it. But I think that's great. What you did is like you just went in there and you made it work, and you were willing to make the changes, that you were willing to do things that those other chiropractors weren't. Like you said, work on Saturdays, and you had to live like maybe you didn't want to live for a couple years. And I think that says a lot. I think I see it now where people are graduating and they aren't willing to do that stuff, or they want to come in and kind of do only what they want to do. And I think to survive, sometimes you have to be willing to do things that other people aren't. And I think certainly working on Saturday was something that we did that really helped us, because there weren't other people open on Saturday. So I'm guessing that Saturday was your best day sometimes.
It was the day that we were both there and treating people. We were only open 3 hours, and we did it like in the summers. We were open in the mornings on Saturdays. In the winters, we were open late afternoon, because that's when everybody got off the ski slopes, and anybody who'd wrecked themselves on the ski slopes that day would be able to come in. So shifting our hours seasonally based on when people wanted to come in helped immensely as well.
Thinking outside of the box. So I think that gives a survival technique. That's great. So do you have a favorite book that you recommend?
So I'd say Peak Performance. It's by Brad Stolberg and Steve Magnus. I read it a couple years ago, but every time I think about it, I'm like, that was the most amazing book. It talks about athletic performance, but it also talks about mental performance, and that it's not about pushing yourself to the limit all the time. And I think it's probably where I tend towards. I'm definitely like the type A go personality. And this was talking about in sports, in mental feats, the recovery and the rest is actually where you develop. And the book had all kinds of science in there, studies on this, studies on that, talked about the different neurotransmitters and the reward centers. It was an absolutely amazing read that will apply to anyone. It applies to business, it applies to athletes.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like you could apply it to yourself, to the business, to your patients, to help them. So that's
just a captivating story. So
okay. And what is the best business advice you've ever received?
I think I've got 2 here. So one, I think we just learned in school, the get involved in the community. Even when you're tired, go to the chamber events, like go to the local barbecues, be involved with the sports teams. Let people get to know you and trust you. Like if you're not, somebody people want to know and trust, then I don't know what you do. But right, chiropractors, you're holding people's necks. You're moving them around. Like people really need to know you and trust you and see you. So I think that's been huge. And it's, we probably, seeing people at, my friends' barbecues a bunch of times. And eventually when they get an injury, they've never seen a chiropractor, they'll come in because they're like, oh, we know Laura and Tyler. Yeah. They're likable people. They seem to know what they're talking about. I'll go see them. The other piece of advice, it's actually advice that my grandfather gave to my dad. So my grandfather was a lawyer. And my dad was like, oh, but Dad, there's so many lawyers, when he was thinking about what he wanted to do. And, how are you ever going to make it? And my grandfather said, son, there's always room at the top. So if you're good at what you do, it doesn't matter if there's a whole bunch of other out there who do the same thing. People are going to come and see you. So therefore, be good at what you do. I mean, work hard, care about people, but also provide excellent care.
That's awesome. Gave me chills. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
So I have Instagram. I'm at Whiskey Chiro. That is because we have a whiskey barber in town and he gives people whiskey and cuts their hair. And I was like, oh, it would be amazing if I could give people whiskey and adjust them because they'd be so relaxed. I started that in school. Obviously, I don't do that. I don't think I can legally do that. But you can find me on there. You can email me as well. It's Dr. Laura, Dr. Laura at jhbackcountryhealth.com. If you have any questions about starting a podcast, if you're thinking about going and living in a crazy, expensive mountain town, I can give you, I'd love to share kind of how we worked through that. If you're working with your spouse as well, I've had numerous people reach out to me and ask, what is it like working with your spouse? Or if you're looking for an associateship, like we're looking for an associateship come this April, maybe sooner.
And what's the name of your podcast in case someone wants to check it out and get an idea of what you're doing there?
Yeah, it is Health in the Whole.
Okay.
Which is, it's kind of a terrible name if you think about it in some ways, but we live in Jackson Hole. So it, like my husband was like, you're really going to name it that? I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like a good sticky name and everyone's going to remember it. And we live in Jackson Hole and everything here is, the Whole Bowl, the bowling place, the Whole Grocer, but spelled like a hole. So
yeah. Well, I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing your journey and giving us some insight to what's worked for you guys and how you've pushed through some of the challenges that you've had. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. And I wish I'd found your podcast 3 years ago when we were first starting and been like, oh, other people have done this. So
thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please share it with your friends on Instagram and Facebook. And for those of you who are already subscribers, we really appreciate it. Thanks for the reviews. We love reading those and knowing that you're loving the podcast. If you're looking for more tips and inspiration, be sure to check us out at lifestylepracticebuilders.com or join our business and marketing Facebook group for chiropractors at facebook.com/group/lifestylepractice.